Hi, I'm George Hill, and welcome to another episode of Slidelock Radio. I've got a couple topics I want to talk about today. Number one is the new Glock pistol. Number two, let's talk about the HK VP9. And the last thing, let's talk about buying guns as an investment. Okay, let's get going on that new Glock. Some people have put out teaser pictures of a new Glock semi-auto pistol, and Glock has themselves teased a few things. We're expecting this to be a subcompact single stack 9mm. I believe it's going to be called the Glock 43. And, I don't keep up on all the new Glocks. And here's why. They've just recently released a whole bunch of new guns in the MOS series. One of them, though, is very interesting. It's a 10mm long slide. And barring that one, basically everything else is what they've already had, but with the addition of a cutout so you can mount a Trichicon TMR or other micro red dot. This is kind of falling in line with what the FNX 45 pistol, the FNX 45 tactical, and the Smith & Wesson core. So you've got this little cover plate that has two screws, and you take the screws off, take the plate off, and then you can mount a Trichicon type RMR, and that's great. And for the people who love them, I'm sure that's going to be big news for you guys, and you guys are going to line up and buy those new Glocks. That's fine. That's fine. If that's what you like, that's great. My take on those little micro red dots is that, I'm not ready for that kind of technology yet. So I'm not a fan. I'm just not. This new little Glock, though, coming out on the heels after everything else, it's going to be debuting at the NRA show, which is cool. That's fine. And being a subcompact single stack 9mm. Well, if you look at the Glock, was it the 42? So this one's going to be the 43, I think. If you look at that little subcompact 380 that they released basically 2 years ago, everybody was disappointed that it wasn't 9mm. At that time, Glock should have put that gun out in 9mm. Now what's happening is they finally do release this in 9mm, and the traction that it could have had is going to be a little bit lessened, because everybody that's bought the little 380 have all said that they wish it was a 9, and some of those guys are probably going to go ahead and trade it in on a 9 or otherwise acquire the 9. But quite a few people are going to be sitting there and saying, well, I've already got this in 380. It's good enough. I'll just stick with this. So out of all the people that I know that looked at that new little 380 and they're either got into it or they're like, no, I'm going to wait for the 9. So they could have struck while the iron was hot. They could have hit that at the peak wave of popularity. But they waited, they put out the 380, and I think they're missing the wave. It's still going to sell well, but it's not going to sell as well as it could have. So they missed the 380 wave, they missed the 9mm wave. You've got other options. What's similar to this? The Ruger LC9S Pro is a good alternative, and it's going to be, $200 less than the Glock? So you've got these options that are already on the market, that are already good, and Glock is 2 years too late to catch that peak wave, which is unfortunate. But like I said, it's still going to sell well. Glock's not worried about that. They're going to do their own thing, regardless of what anybody says, what I say, or what hundreds of thousands of customers have said. They're still going to do it their own way. So we wish them best of luck. I'm not excited about this gun. This gun is not a gun that I would buy, and here's why. yes, it's a Glock and it's size efficient, and it is a good balance of size, capacity, and firepower. That's what Glock does really well. So that gun is going to be good for its purpose, and I can't take anything away from that. However, the Glock remains a piece of soulless, character-free, uninteresting pistol. They just are. Now, you can take a Glock and you can make it interesting by doing some custom stippling, some custom refinishing, and you can make it more interesting. You can change the triggers out, like on my 23, I tried a bunch of different triggers out, and I finally found one that I like. There's some good things that can make the Glock a very usable pistol, but it just doesn't hit me on that emotional level. I don't sit there and hold my Glocks fondly and just appreciate the aesthetics of a Glock, because they don't have any. It's just an appliance. It is just a soulless piece of polycarbonate and steel, but it does what it's supposed to do. It's like an appliance. It's like your oven in your house. It's like your stove in your house. It's there, it works, it does its job every time, and it's reliable. But you don't sit there and you go on discussion forums about stoves and ovens, and look about how you can modify and tweak your stove or oven. I don't know. Maybe there's a Pinterest board on something like that. I'm sure there is. Isn't there a rule about on the internet? If you can think of it, it's a thing on the internet. Yeah. Well, I'm just color me not impressed or excited about the new single stack Glock. I wish them all the best, and if you've been waiting for this, fantastic. You're going to be happy, I'm sure. It'll be a while, of course, until other companies come in with like trigger parts and stuff. But the aftermarket will support it because it's a Glock and it's going to be popular and everybody's going to love it. Well, okay, the next thing I want to touch on really briefly is the HK VP9. I've always said about the HK polymer type pistols, the USP, the 2000 subcompact model. I've always said that they are about $200 too high in price. The HK P30 is probably more so, but at bare minimum, it's about $200 too high. Now, HK has come out with the VP9, basically the people's pistol. The first VP series was the VP70, and that was a polymer framed pistol, really pushing the boundaries. It had a stock that if you put attach the stock onto it on the military version, it would do a 3-run burst at like an insane 11,000 RPM. So real fast cyclic rate. So basically, pull the trigger once, you get 3 impacts on target. As far as a personal defense weapon, that package was very forward thinking. HK was using their imagination, and that was what made that pistol really good. Now, for the civilian market, you don't get the 3-round option. And what made that gun good and forward thinking all of a sudden kind of fell on deaf ears, if you know what I mean. It didn't get that success that HK was hoping. One reason is because the sights were just atrocious. I mean, they really were bad sights. And the trigger pull, while not the worst I've ever felt, or the worst in the industry, really is, though, one of the worst. Very bad, very bad. But what made that gun interesting, the VP70, was that it was the first gun with a polymer frame. So it really stepped out of the normal boundaries and, very forward thinking. And that part I like and I respect. Now, HK is being more forward thinking again, I guess, with the VP9. Or are they? Well, the VP9 is pretty much a striker-fired HKP30. Really, it's not doing anything that is not already being done. You got the interchangeable back strap, you got the interchangeable side panels that the HKP30 had, and those are good. That makes a good, comfortable, ergonomic grip. You've got normal sights, everything that you'd have on a P30, you've got on the VP9, except it's a striker pistol. The trigger pull, though, is actually really good. They've really come a long way. The LEM trigger's much better than the standard DASA. The VP9's trigger pull, it's right up there. I don't think it's quite as good as the Walther PPQ. The PPQ probably has the best trigger pull out of any striker-fired pistol, at least one that I've tested. And the VP9 is close. I think it's a much better trigger than the Glock. I think it's a much better trigger than the XDM. I think the XDM triggers they feel a little mushy to me. They don't have that crisp break that I kind of like. This here just kind of falls off, and the gun discharges. It's just mushy. I can't really put my trigger finger on exactly why I don't like the XDM triggers as much. I mean, they're not bad, but I just don't think they're good. The VP9s, though, it's good. It's a good trigger, and I've got to give HK credit for that. The other thing about the HK is that it is priced, I think, competitively. Yeah, it's more than a Glock. It's more than an M&P. But it is an HK, and you're paying that premium because it is imported from Germany. The German guns are just always going to be more expensive because of that, and also because I think they're worth it. They really are. So the VP9 is definitely a buy in my book. If you've been wanting an HK for some time, then that is absolutely one to get. I think they've hit a home run. The accuracy is impressive. At about 15 yards or so, you can easily keep a group. A nice tight group. Maybe bigger than a 50-cent piece. Probably more like a silver dollar piece. But you can get a really good group out of those HKs. Even the HKP30L, you can get a great group with it. While I'm not a big fan of the trigger pulls on those, the single action pull on the P30L is excellent. And the VP9 has an excellent trigger pull like that. So that's fantastic. But being priced in the 600 range, that's where it should have been. That's where all the HKs should have been. With the modern manufacturing capabilities that we have these days, there's no reason that those pistols should be quite as expensive. Now for the 6 hours, the P220 series, the 226, the 220, 229, those have got some more machining requirements, and that all metal frame, that metal alloy frame, that's gonna, I can see that costing more. But the polymer frame on the HK, just like a polymer frame on a Glock, I'd really like to see those VP9s priced right around that 550 range like Glock is. And I think HK would sell more of them, and I think they would make up in volume, what they lose maybe in profit margin by just dropping the individual price down a little bit. And with that increased volume, you're going to be selling more magazines. You could even be making your own holsters and selling holsters. There's a lot of good that comes with selling a gun at a little better price point. It's kind of like a microcosm of economics 101. If things cost lower, people are gonna buy it more. But HK wants to still be that premium brand, and they can keep that, but if it was priced just a little bit more competitively. The same thing, I could say the same thing for the Walther PPQ. The Walther PPQ is one of my favorite polymer frame pistols out there. I really love the PPQ, but it's getting up there. It's a little expensive. If I'm going to be spending that much money, and this is why I decided I probably wouldn't be buying a VP9 or the PPQ anytime soon, even though they're such excellent guns. If I'm spending that much money, I'd rather spend just a little bit more and go for that SIG 226, 229, P220, and get a truly excellent gun. Probably because, I like an all-metal gun, and I like a hammer-fired gun, because, SIG just has an outstanding trigger pull. They've got an outstanding action, and they're exceptionally reliable and exceptionally accurate, and I like that. I appreciate those. So, even as good as that VP9 is, or the PPQ, I just don't think I'm going to spend my own money on that. That's just me. If you like it, that's great. And I know a lot of guys are doing that. A lot of guys are just loving those guns, and as well they should be, because they are absolutely fantastic. But I just don't quite think they're for me. But that's personal taste. This is the great thing about the gun industry at this time. Fox News put out a report, and they did the report at point blank range. They came into point blank range and did this thing that gun ownership is at an all-time low and whatnot, which is unfounded. It's untrue. But also, not only is gun ownership, riding high, it's growing. More and more people, as the stigma of gun ownership is declining, more and more people are saying, yeah, I think I do want to be responsible for my own personal safety. It's a scary world out there. I want to get a handgun, and I want to learn how to use it. And that is outstanding, and I love that. But my train of thought got derailed. What the hell was I talking about here? So the great thing about the gun industry right now is that not only is everybody, all these new shooters coming into the gun industry, and they're embracing it, and they're seeking training, and they're buying new guns, and they're looking for that innovation. Never in the history of the earth has there been more variety, more options, more selection. You can buy any number of guns, and even if you pick one particular gun, there's so many options on that gun. Modern manufacturing and industry, capitalism has driven this because it's a consumer's market. You can pretty much get a gun that is all 100% fits you. It speaks to you on an emotional level. You can really connect with it because it mirrors your personality. You can have bold finishes, custom sights, custom grips. You can really get a gun that is just a reflection of your personality and your character, and that's fantastic. That's never been done before. That's never been a thing. The gun industry has really followed under the Ford principle of manufacturing with the Model T. You can get it in any color you want as long as it's black, and the gun industry has been, this is what we have to offer, you can get it or not. But now the gun industry is, this is what we have to offer for this customer, this is what we have to offer for this customer. And this allows you the freedom of choice like never before. It's really quite amazing. The auto industry now has like that, really catering to people's wants. But for guns, you can get what you want, and that's absolutely fantastic. Let's move on to the next topic that I want to talk about: buying guns as an investment. So many times at the gun counter, you see the guy that brings in his favorite gun, but he's wanting to trade it in on something that he wants more, and he takes this gun that obviously is his baby. He has put so much gunsmithing work into it, and this gun is just a part of him. His soul is in this gun, but he wants to trade it in for some reason. I don't get that. But, he bought the gun, say, for $500, and he's got maybe another $500 into it, and he brings it to the gun counter. And, he's got this gun that he's into for about $1,000, and he wants to trade it in, and they're going to quote him like $300. And you see these guys just like get red-faced. They get upset about it because they don't understand it. This is, to them, it's $1,000 gun. So they come into the gun store thinking they're going to get close to $1,000 trade-in on it. Well, just like a used car market, the Blue Book dictates. The Blue Book says that this car is worth so much money, which is why the trade-in can only be so much money. Everything you spent on that car to upgrade it does not increase the value of that car as far as trade-in is concerned. The banks are only going to loan X amount of dollars on that, and all of this is based on book. It's based on the book value. Now, what changes, though, is when you've got certain classic cars that have, let's just say, values that go beyond what book values could be for whatever reason. Now, for firearms, if you're going to invest in firearms, if you're going to buy firearms as an investment, you got to look at it as the same thing in the car market. I'm not going to go to a Volkswagen dealership and buy a brand new Passat 2.0 and expect in 5 years to be able to get that much money back out of it or make money on it. That's not going to happen. That car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, depreciates. A firearm, even though people say firearms never lose value, well, they do. They do, because here's why. You buy that gun, you take it out of the gun store, you filled out the 4473, and you go and take it right back into the gun store, and you want to trade it in. Well, that gun is now a used gun. It has devalued. That the value, what you've spent, is no longer what it's exactly worth. Some guns are worse than others, but you're going to take a big cut on that trade-in. Now, say you were going to sell it to somebody. Well, like a Volkswagen Passat, a fairly common gun, or a fairly common car, I should say. You can buy one of those brand new, pretty much in any major city. You're going to have a Volkswagen dealership, and you're going to find that model, and you can buy it. What may make that gun or that car, let's stay on the cars, more interesting to another buyer is if it is a special edition. If it is a limited edition of some sort that's not available, well, then that car has a bit more value. But it only has that bit more value to the people who know that car. So they might be willing to pay full price to get your used secondhand Passat 2.0T. If it is a special edition Passat, if there's something special about it, if there's something that makes it distinct, not from what you've done to it, but because it came from the factory like that. Now, guns are the same way. Say you want a Ruger GP100, okay? It's a fairly common type of revolver, but if you buy just a base standard Ruger GP100, well, that's not going to have that collector's interest. Nobody's going to want to pay full value for it. Let's say it's $700 at your dealer. Nobody's going to want to pay $700 for your used gun when they could go to the dealer and buy buy it brand new for $700. Okay, the whole thing, I've only put one box of rounds through it. I've only put one box of shells through it. That doesn't matter because there's no odometer on the gun. You can't tell how many rounds have gone through the gun, so it's all based on condition. You could have a box of 20, you could have a box of 50, you could have a whole case through that gun, and if it's in good condition, if it's in still pristine condition, nobody's going to know the difference between the 20 rounds or the 1,000 rounds if it's still in really good condition, just for an example. Same thing with any auto pistol. But if you take that gun that's shot 20 or it's shot 1,000, well, if you're going to go resell it, you're going to resell it for about the same amount of dollars. It's not like a car where the low mileage means higher value. It's all about the condition. So when you take a revolver and you start shooting it, you're going to get that ring around the revolver cylinder. So if you see a distinct ring around that cylinder and somebody says, well, I've got only 20 rounds through it, that's probably not true. Everybody lies about how much they shoot. I've seen guys that have had, guns that look like they've never been out of the box and say they've only, shot it a few times. Well, you turn around and you look at it more and you look at these little signs. You take the gun apart and you look at it and you can see, well, you've got, the wear on the slide rails, you've got the wear on the hammer, and you can look at these guns and you can pretty much determine, how much they've been shot by looking at those little signs, and that all packs up into that condition. So if you're going to want to have a gun as an investment, you can shoot it and you can enjoy it, just like you can drive that classic car. But you really got to take care of it because every little ding, scratch, and marks drops off that value drastically. So if you're going to buy a gun for investment, don't shoot it, don't play with it, don't handle it. Now, you can if you're really careful, but I'd recommend you don't, because the difference between 95% and 100% might not be that much, but the difference between 95 and 80, there's a huge difference in value. We're talking, you've just lost half your value by a small degree of condition. But if you're going to buy a gun as an investment, you got to look for the right gun. You can't look for the common guns. Don't look for that Ruger GP100 5-inch or the 6-inch is the common one. You can't look for that one. You got to look for the special edition guns like the Lipsies. Lipsies and Davidsons, they do special editions, but Talon, or the Talo, but the Talo guns also, special editions. If you look for those, that's going to help you on that market, because those are limited editions, they're special editions, so they're going to be a little bit more interesting and they're going to hold more value. However, that's still a common gun that's still in production. So if you go into the gun store and buy a common gun that's in production, that's off the shelf, like say a Glock 23, you buy that Glock 23, you invest, say the common price is $550. You're going to have to sit on that gun for an awful long time until that gun, say, gets a spike in value, and all of a sudden that common gun is now a collector's item. You might have to wait on that gun 100 years. Well, if we go back to 100 years and look at the common guns at that time, you got those Colts, the single-action armies, and one of those in good condition now is worth by order of magnitude so much more because of its vintage and because of its heritage. I would not recommend buying any Glocks as a collector's piece. Now, maybe an RTF2, which is now out of production, the Gen 1s maybe, but they just don't have it. You want to look for a gun that might not be around for very long. Smith & Wesson revolvers have always been interesting. And Smith & Wesson had some changes. They included, say, a lock mechanism on the frame, right behind the cylinder catch. Well, that cylinder latch button, you push it forward and there's the lock. A lot of people hate that lock. So the Smith & Wesson revolvers that are made before the lock are more valuable to collectors now, or people interested in Smith & Wesson revolvers. You go back even further, Smith & Wesson had recessed chambers in the cylinder. Those guns are worth a little bit more now. Smith & Wesson had pinned barrels. So if you got a Smith & Wesson revolver that's got both the pinned barrel and the recessed chambers, well, you've probably got a nice gun that's probably going to be worth something. That would be a good gun if you see it at a gun shop, at a pawn shop, or at a gun show or a private sale. That might be one worth considering because it's got that higher value. It's no longer in production. It's not as common anymore. So that might be a really good gun to get. If you're gonna go into the gun store and look at the new guns and look at what might be a good investment, again, look for the special editions. Look for the ones that are tweaked from the factory. Just because somebody trades in a gun that has a different set of grips on it, that's not a special edition. You got to look for the special editions guns. Look for guns that say just might have recently been discontinued. Now, here's a little tip for those investors. Look at the Para USA guns, because Para has recently been dropped. They're no more. They're shut down. They went the way of Pontiac, but and like Pontiacs, they were never quite all that popular with the entire market. But before they shut down, Para USA was making some really good 1911s. So if I was going to look at an investment gun as something new on the market, or new in the gun store, new in the box, I'd probably get one of the harder to find Para USA guns, such as the Expert. They had a Commander version of the Expert. Really nice, really well made. Something like that, you grab that and you sit on that for a few years, and that gun might start going up in value. Guns that are that are novelty, they might be uncommon, like say maybe the Mossberg chainsaw. That's not one that's ever going to go up in value, because it was just, I'm not going to say it was stupid, but it was stupid. Nobody's going to want that. That's really not special. And that is just simply a forend with a rail on it with a handle attached to it. So even though that gun might be different, maybe not quite such a good idea. But some guns that are different, say, look at those Utahs, weird 12 gauge dual feed tube guns. Utahs, that gun might not be commercially successful, and that means that gun might not be around that much longer. And say the ATF might make some changes on importation regulations, and all of a sudden those Utah's 12 shotguns are orphaned. Not looking into the future, making any predictions, just using that as a possible example. Well, that's a unique gun, and it potentially being fodder for abandonment by the company or by importation regulations for whatever reason, that might be an interesting gun. So you want to look at guns kind of like that. They might do well. If something happens, all of a sudden those guns are going to spike in value, and you could flip them for some good coin. But really, if you're going to get into guns as investment, you got to go for the old classics. Just like if you're going to be successful in the stock market, there's definitely companies that have a history and tradition of performance in the stock market. And, those good, safe, foundational stocks are good to invest in. So looking at firearms, you want to look at maybe some of those and I'm talking about, Winchesters and Colts specifically. Look for those old Winchesters that are, they've got a good price, they're in good condition. You're not going to find them in the 95 to 100% condition anymore, because they've aged, they've got some patina on them. But you're looking for stocks that are in good shape. You're looking for that gun that has not been refinished, because when you refinish one of these old classics, you've ruined it. You've ruined the finish. So it's not going to have that value. So you're looking for the guns that are in original condition, in good condition, and invest in those, because those always go up in value. The old Colts, the same way as the Winchesters. There's different nuts and bolts to what to look for in investing. And if you want to invest in guns, I would suggest that you need to educate yourself in those guns, just like you would in the stock market. If you're going to be buying stocks, you're going to look at a company's portfolio and study that company's track record and where it's been and where it looks like they're going, where they say they're going. That's just what a wise investor does. And that's why so many companies or so many people go to these brokerage companies, and they use these stockbrokers to make those decisions for you, because they've studied the market and they know what's going on probably better than the Joe Blow off the street. So study those guns, pick a couple brands, study what those values are, and when you start hunting for investment guns, hunt for those guns that you've studied. Now, you could look for old, Mutaba or Mataba revolvers, which was kind of like the precursor to the Rhino. Maybe those guns, because I've seen them out there. Maybe that might be a good investment gun. The old Webleys. Pick an era. Look for old, say, Enfield rifles. There's less Enfields than there are Mosin Nagants. So if you're looking to invest in old Mosins, that's kind of a hard market to get into, because they just really don't have, a whole hell of a lot going for them as far as investments go. But we have seen, even on the Mosin Nagants, going from $100 to $200. So really they have doubled. So that's doing quite well. But I think that those Mosin Nagants might not give you, that great return. Like, say you find a really golden Enfield or Springfield 1903 or a K98 Mauser would do good. If you can find one that's got the right markings on it, it's the right vintage, it was made in the right year, and the condition's really good, well, then that might be something that you might want to invest in, because those, as the years go on, you're going to be able to flip them. Now, you can't do day trading with firearms. Well, maybe you can, but you're cutting yourself short. Firearms investments, you're looking for that long-term investment. You're looking for that investment where you go ahead and plan on holding on to it for 10 years, or maybe even 20 years, because that's where you're going to see, your best returns. Look for original packaging in any of these guns. If they've got the original packaging, that really helps out a lot. The original manuals, anything that came with the gun brand new, especially if you've got old cartridges that match the gun or were for that gun, those old vintage cartridges. If you've got an original gun, with all of its kit and original cartridges from the 1800s, you've got a valuable little package, no matter what it is. And really, condition is probably a little bit more, easier, at that point, because you've got the box, you've got the literature, you've got some cartridges, so you've got this whole historic package. So if the condition is a little bit less than ideal, well, since you've got the whole kit, that's going to play favorably for you as a return on investments. Now, you could do, going back to those old Winchesters, there's a lot out there. That are still in great condition. So you can still find those buys. But be careful with those. And here's the difficult part, is that there's a lot of people out there that's looking for them too. So that market is a little bit more aggressive than, say, classic Savage 99s. People looking for Savage 99s. Those old Winchesters, though, can give you some really great returns on your investments. A lot of people looking for them. This also plays into your advantage because there's a lot more people willing to buy them. So if you got a great buy on one of them a couple years later, you look at the market again for that particular gun, there's probably people out there willing to pay, and that's the key, willing to pay those premium values to get that gun so they can acquire that gun for their collection. So it is a good market to get into because it's competitive. It's aggressive, but it's aggressive and competitive for a reason. It's a good market. If you get into that, you can quite easily earn enough money to buy a really nice motorcycle, if you play your cards right, because I've seen it. Guns that people have bought for $200, turned around and sold them for $6,000. You want to get into, look at the brands, look at the makes, models, and histories of those brands, look at those values. And when you go shopping for those, when you go looking on whatever classified ads, the gun shows, if you're more educated, you're going to make a better buy on that. And just because a gun is old doesn't mean it's valuable. Get to know the guns so you know if there's parts missing. So once you start looking at a bunch of them, you get an eye for that condition. So you can tell which one is going to be better than another, which one might be all original, which one might be a parts gun. So it takes a lot of careful study of the gun. You can't just pick up a gun, look at it in 10 seconds and say, I'll buy it. You've got to know how to evaluate that gun and look for those details. Look for matching serial numbers on the old military guns. But if you study it, then you can have a success. You can't just go and get a gun, take it to a gun store and expect to get your money out of it. It just doesn't work that way. And I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. Whoever told you that guns never lose value, they didn't know. They don't understand the economy of the gun industry, of these investment guns. But it's a fascinating subject. It's a fascinating topic. Go get some books on these guns. Go get some history books. Go get a blue book gun value book, and really get to learn some about what you want to get into, because you can make some good money. I've made some money on some of these. I've lost some money early on. I lost money on them. I had an old Mauser K98 Action. It had the German World War II stamps on it. It had the swastikas. It had the eagles. I mean, this gun was a legit World War II Nazi Mauser. It was really cool. I sold it for $300. What I should have done, though, is sold it for $3,000, which is what they were worth at the time. I didn't know what I had, so I sold it at a loss. And after I did that, and I realized years later just how stupid I was, I vowed never to do that again. Now, I've sold guns to friends at, below collector value there, just to help out friends. I've done that, and I don't consider that to be a loss. I consider that to be helping out a friend. But if you want to make money in guns, in those old guns, you've got to be very shrewd about it. And there's still money to be made, because there's still a lot of guns out there, and a lot of guns that you can buy at really good deals if you're careful. So I'll just wrap up with that. Be careful and stay safe. And I'll see you next week on Slidelock Radio. Thank you.